one stone. Well, if you're looking at the title of this video, it is What's Wrong with Being Wrong? And I think that's a conversation that we should have because a lot of us, for one reason or the other, are afraid of being wrong. It's like that word somehow invalidates our entire being. I don't know how many times I've had conversations with people and the thought that they're wrong just freaks them out. And if you tell them they're wrong, then they will do everything they can to avoid facing that reality. My dog right here, she can't be wrong. She's making all this noise while I'm in the middle of trying to make this video. But wasn't that interesting? Let me show you this dog. This is Angel, who is anything but. And I'll tell you about her. I was not one to want a dog, but I ended up with one anyway. And now, for one reason or other, she's very in love with me. And even if she sees my wife hug me or kiss me, she starts barking and tries to nudge in between us. It's pretty ridiculous. But that's beside the point. Back to being wrong. I have never had a problem with being wrong. Ever since I was a little kid, if I was wrong, I was wrong. If I didn't know something, I didn't know something. And if I knew something, I was very confident about what I knew because I never would say anything unless I knew something about it. I would study stuff. I would do my research, like so many people say right now, which in these days, when I hear somebody say, do my research, I just hear I'm repeating what somebody else told me. But that is because a lot of people, like those who do the research, don't like being wrong. And there's something in our system that has really jacked us up. Let me tell you a funny story. So, and I might have told you this before, but if I didn't, so what? Let's go into it. So I was in high school, and for some reason, I did a terrible on a test. And my teacher thought I should be ashamed of myself and embarrassed, but I wasn't because I felt like I went from not knowing stuff to knowing some stuff, but I just didn't know enough to pass. And it took me several iterations of that test before I passed it. And when I passed it, I was thrilled with myself. But she thought that I should be ashamed, that I should feel bad with myself. Hi, Rev Evelyn. She thought I should feel bad because I had been wrong so much. But that's the problem. We get taught in school that you come into the class with 100. I had teachers say stuff like that. You started the class off with 100, and where you stay is up to you. And then people think that if they make a bad grade or they don't do so perfectly on the test, then they're somehow failing, and that takes away from the fundamental reality of who they are. But the truth is that the fundamental reality of who we are emerges from a divine, infinite intelligence that is never in error. So what does that mean when we do see a lot of crazy things in the world? Well, if we look at it from a soul perspective, it means that we're in a learning situation. Like it's not an error to not know and then to learn. But what happens is when we refuse to learn or refuse to admit that we don't know, then we continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And most of the time we do this because we're afraid of being wrong. But I don't think there is anything wrong with being wrong. And the more we realize that there's nothing wrong with being wrong, it'll be easier for us to do what is right. Does that make sense? So besides the school situation, another one this huge, and I think Rev Evelyn could attest to this, is church. We've been taught that we were born in sin and this, that, and the other thing in a lot of Christian churches. But that's not how it was taught originally. And when we hear sin, we think sin means bad person. And that is not what it means either. If you've ever studied this thing, the word sin actually means to miss the mark. But people only can miss a mark if they're aiming for the mark. So it's another learning situation. Sin is an archery term. And so if a person's trying to hit the mark, then you say, hey, look, they're trying to hit the mark. Oh, listen, you didn't hit that mark you were aiming for. Now you need to adjust a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit up, a little bit down. You adjust so you can get better at hitting the mark. But when you are taught that if you don't hit the mark, you're fundamentally an inadequate or unworthy human being, then people want to hide when they make mistakes. They want to hide when they miss the mark. They don't want to tell other people. They don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be humble. They don't want to say, I tried that and failed, because they're afraid of looking like they're a wrong person, a sinner, that their fundamental essence is doo-doo. But that's not the case. So what would it be like if all of us came into this awareness of like, listen, I come into the world not knowing a lot of things, but I'm always trying to hit the mark. So I'm always learning. But even when I make mistakes, that's okay, because I'm getting better every day. That's what I tell my daughters. When they have problems, I say, listen, we make mistakes, but it's okay, because we get better every day. And then they can improve. If our systems were built around improvement instead of trying to hide from our failures, we would have a much better system, or much better systems. And so my invitation to all of you is to own your mistakes. Be open to learning. One of my friends, when he teaches classes, he says that there's no winners or losers. You're either on the winning team or you're on the learning team. But as long as you're learning, you're getting closer to winning. And that's the mindset that I think we need to have more of, because otherwise we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And it's a lot of people who don't know things, who won't admit that they don't know things, just because they don't want to look like they don't know things. But the fact is, they don't know things. How crazy is that? I'll tell you another interesting thing that I've been really mindful of lately is that the best way I can describe is I had this dream recently, and one of our country's notorious POSs was in the dream. And I was sitting out on the corner waiting for a bus, and this person pulls up and they're driving a two-story house. That sounds crazy, but they were driving a two-story house like it was a bus. And they opened up the door and they let me in. And I didn't know who it was. They said, "You need a ride?" I heard them and I said, "Yeah, I do." I came in and it was this really notorious POS, right? And I said, "Oh my God, are you blank?" I don't feel like saying this person's name. And they said, "Yeah." And I was just like, "Aren't you dead?" And the person was like, "Well, yeah, I am dead, but I'm trying to figure out what went wrong." And then they proceeded to tell me some of the things that they did, but they did it from a place of almost innocence. That's the best word I can describe it, because they were like, "I don't know what I did wrong. I was trying to get power. I was trying to get money. I was trying to beat other people. That's what we get taught to do here. But now I'm the asshole, basically." And I was like, "Yeah, you are." But then I also was mindful that they felt like they were doing everything they were taught to do. And how many of us do things that are harmful to ourselves and others because that's what we were taught by our system? Now, obviously, if you realize that you're doing something that's not serving your true intentions, then it's better to adapt and say, "Hey, I was wrong. I thought this, and now I'm going to correct myself and do better." But so many of us do things that our systems teach us to do, our parents teach us to do, our churches teach us to do. We see people who have no consequences for their actions, or no relational consequences when they do harm to other people. And so they can't gauge themselves. They can't tell when they're missing the mark, because everyone's trying to be good. Everyone's trying to do the right thing, and they have different ideas of what good and what the right thing is. But all everyone knows is they don't want to be bad. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be seen as lacking. But as long as you got that mindset, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. So then again, my invitation is, assume the best about yourself and others, not to be in a naive way, but to realize that you're here learning. There's so much you didn't know. You probably made a lot of mistakes in life. I made a lot of mistakes in my life. And some of the mistakes I made in my life were me thinking I was doing the right thing. I just recently had to come to terms with the fact that in my previous relationships, I thought I was like a good boyfriend, good husband, whatever the case may be. But what I was missing is what my partners, I'm assuming this, but my assumption is that my partners, what they wanted from me was something that I unconsciously made some kind of agreement when they first encountered me. And then I wasn't staying true to that agreement. And so then they felt like I had betrayed them. Now, it wasn't an agreement in terms of like fidelity or anything like that, because I was super faithful, super loving, all those other things. But I actually was a person, when I met my previous partners, I was a very disciplined person, and a person that kind of like say what I mean what I say, don't mess around, don't play. and I got that from my mom for the most part. And when I got with them, sometimes they would make mistakes, and I should have told them like, "Yo, you're making a mistake right here, the way you're engaging me." But I kept making like excuses for them because I didn't want to come off as being too rough. Because in other instances, people told me that I was like too direct or too hard or too intense. And so with my partners, I was being like really like kind of gentle, loving. They would do stupid stuff. No offense to them. A lot of times it had to do with money, and I would just try to be like, okay, I understand. I understand. I would just keep getting on opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And then later they would blame me. And I was like, what you blaming me for? Like, you made these decisions. And they both told me the same thing. Well, you didn't stop me. You didn't tell me. You didn't help me. You didn't let me know I was going too far. You didn't say anything when I did like this. And even though that's hard to gauge, the fact is, when they met me, they thought I was gonna. And somebody told me this in a class this weekend while I'm studying the Enneagram, and somebody told me in the Enneagram class, you know what your challenge probably was, is they were attracted to that part of you, and they thought you were going to be that for them, that they thought you were going to be their discipline, you were going to be their structure, you were going to be those things. And when you weren't that for them, then they felt abandoned in their own kind of way. And that was a hard pill to swallow because I thought I was doing all the right things. But if I was really being present with what they were feeling, they actually did tell me that. They actually, I mean, it's a weird thing to kind of gauge, but there's times again where you think you're doing the right thing and you're not. Like, I should have maybe ended a relationship sooner. Um, but then it sounds like I'm putting it on them. But it's really I was afraid of parts of myself, like my emotions and my anger and other things like that. So I didn't want those things to come out. And they probably wanted some of that from me because my ex told me, like, I can't tell when you're mad. And I was like, well, I'm telling you, but I would never show any emotion in that kind of way. So they felt like disconnected from me. And that's a thing that's hard to swallow when I thought that being calm and being these things were good things, but they couldn't gauge where they were off the mark with me because I was saying everything was okay all the time and trying to be a peacemaker person in that context, because I feel like I had to deal with so much stuff outside the house. I didn't want to deal with it in the house, but I probably should have flipped it around. Who knows? At any rate, there's many instances in life where we make mistakes, but if we know that that does not take away from the fundamental worthiness of who we are, we can make those mistakes and also receive grace for ourselves and extend that grace to others. Right now, we live in a time where we don't give ourselves grace and we don't give other people grace. Many people don't. And so instead, we keep playing these games, playing these illusions, putting on airs and all these other things. And all it does is hurt everybody. And so my invitation to you is to understand that you're always learning. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay. You get better every day. And there's nothing wrong with being wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. Sometimes we make things take a lot longer and the impacts are a lot harder because we're trying to hide from our mistakes. But I'm saying, let's just face them. Like our country has made a lot of mistakes. Our country has done a lot of failing, and we have not we have not named it. We got all this racism and all these other institutional problems, sexism, misogyny, which is, in that same vein, all these things. And we just don't face the fact that we have not lived up to the promises that we made to each other. All these social agreements, we failed on them time and time again. But if we can own that instead of being like, well, we're the greatest country in the world. No, we made mistakes and it's okay, because even a country can get better every day if we try. So I'm just going to leave it at that. There's nothing wrong with being wrong as long as you're learning. Let's do more learning. Let's do more grace with ourselves and with others when we make mistakes. And hopefully over time, we'll grow into the highest expressions of what we're capable of, which is a whole lot, because we've come from infinite intelligence and we all have access to it. But if we can't admit that we need to learn something, we're just going to keep doing the same stupid stuff over and over again. So thanks for your time. Hope this serves you. If it does, share it with other people. Peace.